Hello everybody, welcome back to Road to Master. I hope you all have an amazing day. We are here going over my second game from the Congress I played, where I was in the open section, and spoiler alert, I didn't win. Anyway, so I am black here against a 1914, very strong player, and real quick, I don't think I've been doing accuracies on these. So accuracies, my opponent got 83.6 and I got 74.1, and it was a perk. I knew he played d4. I didn't know he played the London perk sort of thing with bishop to f4. Not straight away going into a London. They've not played e3, but it's sort of heading that way. So straight away I have to switch my sort of goals, which, spoiler alert, again, I don't. But yeah, I was hoping for a King's India. I knew he played the modern, which is similar to the perk, slightly different, but so he would have a good idea of what to do as white. You should have a good idea of what to do anyway, especially in the open category, but you know, you see things from a different angle when you play stuff yourself. We carry on. H3 is a move. I guess H3 is mainly just to allow bishop to h2 to stop the bishop getting kicked around with knight h5, which is something people do against like the London. When the bishop comes out, you want to sort of get rid of it if possible, because it's technically a bad bishop in the sense that it's on the same color as your pawns, but it's also quite a strong bishop, if that makes sense. It's a bad but good bishop. Anyway, so that's h3, and h3 is also stopping any ideas on g4 as well. Castle, knight c3, sound, and d6. Now my theory, I think, does actually say we should play d5 and then c5 at some point, but I like sticking to my guns, as you know. So we go d6, looking for c6, b5. There is potential our opponent can castle queenside, which is realistically what I would hope for, because I do quite enjoy playing against that. Doesn't always go my way, but it ends up in a fun game, which is probably the most important thing, I would say. Well, apart from winning, but it is motivating when you enjoy the position, right? So they go e4 like normal. They want to control the center rather than e3, because they've put their queen on this diagonal with the bishop, so they don't want to be blocking that up with e3. a3 is a smart move. I think it prevents, not really prevents, but it sort of stops some ideas of queen a5. I think you probably still should go queen a5. And it stops b4 ideas. So if I ever want to play e5, probably not right now with the bishop here, but we've seen before, if they decide to push, then we could counter push with b4 and get a tempo on the knight and lock it up in our favor, which would be ideal, right? But they don't go for that. I go knight d7. I wasn't too happy with knight bd7 because people have been telling me you don't really know where your knight wants to go in the perk unless you know where your knight wants to go, if that makes sense. Like it could belong here, it could belong here, it could belong here. So you don't want to commit too early with that knight, but I think it has to, because you want to get the rook across, you want to get the bishop active somehow. So I think this is probably the only way, and maybe you want to stop e5 by playing e5 yourself. But then again, if they decide to play e5, we can move the knight somewhere. The computer likes knight h5, kicking the bishop, but I think knight e8 is probably just as good. What does the computer say? Best move, apparently. Two best moves, sure. And the point is, if they take, you take back with the knight, apparently. You can do either. I think either's fine. Apparently the knight. And then I guess you've got some nice squares, potentially. And you've freed up your bishop in the process as well. So that makes sense. You just have to be a bit careful of this e-pawn if they get a rook on the e-file. But that's in the future, and you've got plenty of time to defend against that. So anyway, that's why we can allow e5. You could try push e5, but especially with the bishop on f4, it's unlikely to work out in your favor, I think. And even if you try, like, say they do a waste of a move, like knight h5 to kick the bishop can always go back and just stay on the diagonal anyway. So that is why e5 doesn't really work. And I think in this game I was really trying to force these central pawn breaks with d5 and e5. d5 you should never really do, but we went for it anyway, spoilers. And yeah, here I think they go bishop e2, which is a sneaky move. Usually the bishop, I think, wants to be on d3. But e2 is interesting. And he's tempting fate. Yeah, he can castle either way, which is sort of annoying for me because I can't commit too much straight away, which is a shame. I think before the knight comes back, maybe I can go queen a5, actually. And threaten b4 maybe straight away because of the pin on the rook, but then they just move the knight. And maybe c5 could work in that situation, but it's interesting, and I don't think it's the proper way to play. So they go bishop e2 here, and here I go a5. a5 is not the correct move. I think a good move would be a6 instead. Apparently still not a good move. Apparently, what is the best move? c5 straight away. Really? Apparently e5 actually a decent move, which seems wild to me. After takes, surely just knight takes, right? Then what? Knight takes, queen takes, I guess? Or you could even castle. Castle apparently loses. Why does castle lose? That's very interesting. Queen takes d2. Not rook takes d2. We'll try rook takes anyway. Oh, and then you just move the knight back. Really? Oh, yeah. That actually makes sense. I think I'm being silly there. So you either have to take the queen or take the knight, right? I think taking the queen's best. Because it's more forcing than taking the knight, right? Because they could take the queen, your queen with check. I'll just show that, actually. If they take the knight, you could take with check and sort of mess up their king a bit, which would be not nice for them. So once you take back with the rook, then they take the bishop. And this, to me, looks just like you're a pawn down. And the computer agrees it's +1, so that's about a pawn. I don't know why that's saying that's a good move then, because I don't think anyone voluntarily just goes that bad in the elo, right? But c5, I think, is the top move here, which looks like it gives up this pawn, which is why I was suggesting a6. It wants bishop takes b5, and then queen b6. Oh, because you get the b pawn back, unless they go like a4. Or take the knight, apparently the best move. I'd probably go knight takes. Knight takes apparently loses. Oh, no. Oh, this position, man. This is not for me. You take this. Computers are crazy. Computers are crazy. Anyway, I think my coach suggested a6. And the reason you play a6 is because after something like castles, bishop b7 is the move, and you're actually looking for c5. And you're looking to sort of force this bishop to be good. Say they make a move. Rook d1 seems natural. Then c5, I think. If they take, I think you take back with the knight and you're threatening the e-pawn. Very heavily, actually. Very, very heavily. You've got 3 pieces on it, which is crazy. And suddenly your positions just become active, right? If they push, then what do? You go b4, apparently. And if a takes, c takes. Knight a4 doesn't seem right because maybe you can go... Actually, yeah, maybe you can go queen a4, a5. Maybe you can go queen a5. Yes, queen a5 is a good move. And now, you're not looking too good, I think. b3? Bishop c4, apparently. That doesn't look right. Really? Can you not just take? But then you've got tricky tricks. Rook a1 traps the queen. Wow. That is very cool. That is very, very cool. That's a nice trick, actually. I really like that. But if you wanted to be more safe, maybe b3. But then you've got this killer bishop, right? Killer bishop. And you lose the e-pawn as well, so it doesn't look particularly nice. Where were we? What other options are they? I think they're not going to ignore it. They could try ignore it. Bishop h6, apparently. Trying to counterattack, potentially. And then, yeah, you just give up a pawn. Yeah, because you're threatening the e-pawn. So what if they try, like, push then? I'm guessing takes, right? C takes D. Yeah, you're threatening the knight. Queen takes, and then what? Knight h5. Hit the bishop and open up the bishop for... Wow, the attack on the queen. That is really nice. I like that. Really, really cool. Anyway, I didn't do any of that. I went a5 in hopes they were going to castle queenside, which is just not right. And now, because we don't have a6 in place, all of these c4 ideas, c5 ideas sort of go down the drain, which isn't ideal at all. And we don't even have queen a5 either. So it's just not nice. And this is the start of a very, very long trip to a losing position, right? So they castle kingside. Obviously, they're not walking into my attack going castling queenside. Rook e8 for some reason. Rook e8 also a very bad move, because if they ever play e5, you want this square for your knight on e8. So just blocking that up, this knight is all of a sudden looking very sad with very few squares to go to. In fact, it's forced to h5. And after h5, it still does not have many squares to go to. So yeah, it's not nice. It's a sad knight. They go rook fd1, which seems weird to me. What was the computer move? e5, yeah. e5 makes a lot of sense. Knight h5, threaten the bishop, I guess. But then maybe just take. Bishop h2, just retreat. And they can't really do much about this. If you take, I think you've just opened up way too much. D takes. Knight takes e5. Oh, because you've got takes with check, so you can't take the queen now. Actually, that's kind of interesting. You have to take this because you're actually threatening to take the queen's defender with check. So this is easy to slip up. Maybe they could afford to go like rook d1 or something. But queen takes, and then I guess takes check. Bishop takes, and then rook takes, and they go ahead and take the c pawn. And probably all of these pawns as well, which is not nice. I would consider that very much losing. For some reason, I decide to make my position weirder by going knight f8. I don't really know what I was thinking. Maybe I wanted h5, knight h7, or maybe knight e6. But things start to get very, very bad from this point. Bishop h6 was played, which I think is reasonable, especially because I'm so cramped. But I do also have good control over the h7 pawn, especially with these two knights here. But yeah, I could maybe take this, but I played bishop h8 because we're on a roll of playing bad moves, right? It's just so cramped. It's so cramped. And this bishop, I don't think ever really gets out of the corner until I'm having to sacrifice the bishop for a pawn. Yeah, it gets bad. It gets bad. They go queen e3. I'm guessing to play e5 and then the rook's hitting the queen once the pawns get traded off in the center. And in response to that, I played d5. Again, don't ask. I think here you can just take, maybe, and maybe knight takes. Knight takes, queen takes. I don't know if c4 is a move. What's the correct move here? The computer's frozen on me. Where are we? Bishop takes... Bishop can't take anything. Oh, bishop takes b5? No. Anyway, we're going to have to ignore that because the computer's not being my friend. Anyway, they decide to push e5. And I've got another question. Where is this knight going? Where is this knight going? If I go to d7, that's a death sentence, right? It can't go anywhere at all. It can only go further away from the battle, which is not what I want. So I sort of have to go knight h5. And at that point, you're just giving them tempos. Yes, I can hide away on g7, but how long can I actually hide for? You know, it's just a matter of time. I think here you could probably just push g4, and I'm in a lot of trouble. Maybe even trade off, but you probably don't need to. Maybe like knight h4 or something. And then you just push the f-pawn to victory. It seems like a simple enough plan for me. They decide to go bishop d3, which sort of makes sense. You know, you bring in more pieces into the battle. And you don't really have to do anything about this right now, because I'm not really going anywhere with my knights. They are 2-2 stuck. I go knight e6. I think I've got to try to get the knights active in some way. And I keep shuffling these knights. Queen b6, hoping for some c5 tricks. Potentially try trade off the queens and get rid of some of the pressure. Because, to be fair, I'm not down material, right? I'm not down material. So if I can afford to trade off the queens, say they waste a move, and I get c5 in, I still don't think it makes that much of a difference. But if they decide to take, say, and I go like this, maybe we can say some of the pressures dealt with. They get the pawn, but it's slightly more manageable. It's still losing, don't get me wrong, but potentially there was some ideas, is what I'm trying to say. But they completely nullify that with c3, right? Because if I push, like, I can just take and then they take, and all that's done actually is open up a file for them, which isn't great. I go bishop d7, trying desperately to connect my rooks and maybe break through somehow. Also trying to protect this pawn, I guess, once I play c5. But they go ahead and play b4, which shuts everything down, right? I can take. But I don't think that really benefits me. The good thing is, if they take, that does actually benefit me, because I'm getting pressure on the a pawn, and maybe I can invade if a miracle happens. So what I'm trying to do is go rook a7, rook a8, and then try breaking somehow this way. But it's a very clear plan and very preventable as well. So they just ignore it, right? And they go g4. I get together and they go rook c1, which is an interesting move. I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to take, and I thought here, yeah, well, my thought was they leave this here and say they waste another move. If I take, maybe they could take with the c pawn, which looks interesting because you get the play on my backwards pawn. And yes, I could take this, but at the end of the day, they're going to trade one rook off, and it's just going to be a bit awkward here while this is all still coming, and they sort of need... I can get the queen along as well, but I need everything for defense, right? It's double-edged, I think. It's double-edged here, but the computer thinks it's evenish, which proves me wrong, I guess, that I don't actually know anything about chess. Anyway, rook c1, sorry. Good move. I take, and then they take with the a pawn. They let my rooks in because they know it doesn't really matter because these are just coming, right? And there's nothing I can really do about it. Rook a2, trying to get in. Completely unnecessary, I think. I don't think I'm actually threatening anything. And bishop e1 kicks my rook straight away. And at this point, I'm just sort of shuffling with my rooks. I go knight f8 to try and open up the bishop so I can play f5 maybe, and slow down these pawns, but it doesn't really matter. They take en passant, and all of a sudden their queen's very, very open. I think here you can go queen e7, and I'm a bit done for. Because my rooks are sort of out the game, but they decided to go f5, which is the best move. Great. I push, trying to delay the inevitable, but the pawns come h4. I go rook a8 to try bring the rook back, hit the queen. Stuff happens. Maybe I could try for some perpetuals if I can take this knight and get the queen over somehow, and move this queen as well. There's a lot of ifs, right? But it's over. It's over. I have to give up a knight. I have to give up the bishop, and then yeah, that's that. It was a tough game. I got really outplayed here. And my coach said this was the one game. The rest of the games were a bit more reasonable. This was the game I really got outplayed in, which is great. But there was a clear thing I learned from this game, which is also really good, I think. And that's this bishop b7 idea, along with c5. If they decide to castle short. If they castle long, I've got a very clear plan of pushing these pawns and getting a rook in and trying to attack the king. But if they castle short, I don't really have those same ideas, and I need to recognize that, and I need to change my plan. So learning this bishop b7, c5 sort of thing, and if they go e5, remembering I have knight to e8 to defend, I think helps a lot. But anyway, that was that. We'll have a look at some better games. I think the rest of the games are a bit better soon. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like if you liked. Please subscribe if you really liked. And I'll catch you guys all later. Bye-bye.